So that brings us to the next presentation, and that's the presentation that's going to be given by Sanne Tromp. And Sanne is the Director of Knowledge and Innovation at SLO, and that is the Netherlands Institute for Curriculum Development. Sanne, the floor is yours, please. Yeah, very good.
So is mic working? Yes, I think it is.
Yes, yeah.
And is this the clicker?
Yeah, yes,
okay, very good. Well, thank you for the invitation to speak at this conference. I'm very humbled to enter a world which is relatively new to me, because I'm from the field of education, and you're all from the field of sustainability, promoting sustainability, the SDGs, the whole school approach. You have a large and big history, and I feel like a newcomer into this field. So I will try to present a little bit about the Dutch curriculum. And I will also try to pose a few maybe challenging questions at the end of my presentation. But I've also already learned quite a lot by the presentation of Arjan, I wish to mention, and Rosalie, of course. Promoting sustainability is, of course, one of the most pressing issues of our society. Let me just, yes, there we go. Is one of the most pressing issues nowadays, promoting sustainability, and it is very important to create opportunities to learn from each other on a global scale, on a European scale. So once again, congratulations with organizing this conference. I prepared to talk together with Karianne, so while I will be speaking, it is a joint product. In fact, Karianne will also give a workshop during this conference later. Well, I quite like the WSA model because it is a very integral model. It is about pedagogy, it is about the building of the school, it's about the school environment, it's about professional development of teachers, and it's also about curriculum. And as the director of SLO, the Dutch National Center for Curriculum Development, it will not surprise you that I will be talking mainly about the curriculum aspect of the whole school approach. And in the light of the challenges that we face nowadays, this is a small map of the Netherlands. I'm a geographer, so I really need to have a map in all my presentations. Lunteren is not here, but it's near Amersfoort, as you know, probably. But in light of all the challenges that we face, I wish to discuss the Dutch education system basically as some sort of a case study of a national context in which the whole school approach may blossom or may not blossom. I will pay some attention to a very peculiar aspect of the Dutch education system, which is the freedom of education, talk a little bit more about curriculum and sustainability within the curriculum, and at the end I will also discuss the contested nature of curriculum. Curriculum is also about values. Curriculum is not just about what works, it is also about what matters. So I will get back to that. But we do face a number of huge challenges in the few, well, not in the very far future. We will actually have a population that approaches the 8 billion or maybe even more, 9 billion people that we all need to feed and they need to have clean drinking water. And this is a huge problem for our world. And I'm sure that you all know this better than I do. But it is a global problem, not only here in Europe, where we realize because of the war in Ukraine that we are very much dependent on other countries, but it's a global problem and a very pressing problem in many parts of the world, clean drinking water and food. And in the Netherlands in particular, we have a very specific problem with climate change. It is expected that the water levels will rise 1.2 to 2 meters, which effectively means that about 50% of our country will be underwater in the near future. So it is something that we need to urgently address. Another challenge, which is very well known right now, I'm very happy we can have a live conference. I'm also aware that there's quite a few people watching it at home, maybe to reduce their CO2 print, but maybe also because of COVID regulations that people need to stay at home. And it has huge effects on education, apart from, of course, the economy and public health, etc. It has shown the COVID pandemic how food production, population, ecology, economy, and health are all interconnected. And basically how we as a people are interconnected because the spread of COVID-19 was, of course, so quickly. And particularly with regard to education, it has shown that education is about so much more than just the transfer of knowledge and skills. Basically, education provides for the fabric in society. Kids are seen by their teachers. They look into the eyes of the kids when they come into the classroom. They can see how they're behaving, how they're doing. And without that, through online classrooms or with school closure, this is a very we have seen in the Netherlands an increase in child molestations during the COVID pandemic because the social fabric of the school just was not functioning. So this is a big problem, has been a big problem. And of course, the war in Ukraine, but also the many wars in other parts of the world, as Arjen rightly mentioned. It's not just in Ukraine, it's been going on in many places in the world. So basically, mankind longs for peace, but we live in a fractured world, as Rabbi Sachs used to write. But there's also hope, and their hope is about the Sustainable Development Goals. We can choose a different path, and it's been described in the 17 SDGs, and of course one of them is about education, SDG number 4. And there's also a strong call to make sustainability an integral part of the curriculum in all schools in the world. Now, sustainability to me is much more than just the ecological sustainability. It's also about, as is described here, about peace, about climate action, about reduced inequalities in the societies, etc. So I would rather promote a broad definition of sustainability in my talk. Now, these are some of the challenges that we face, and this is just a call that people have for our education system. I'm very curious as to your opinion on the challenges that we face, and also what you feel that students should learn to do or not to do. So I have a small poll, which will be shown on screen. Hopefully also people online can also fill in. So if you go to the website on your phone or on your iPad or laptop to menti.com and fill in the code, which is written on the screen, or maybe you choose the QR code. And perhaps the screen can be switched to the Mentimeter. And there's 2 questions that I would like to ask you. Firstly, just finish the sentence basically, considering the urgent societal problems of, and then you can fill in the blanks, maximum of 3 problems that you can mention. There you go, 17 people have answered already. Give some more time. So climate change has been mentioned quite often, I suppose, because it's pictured a little bit larger, but also unpeace. I've seen unpeace, which I quite like, the unpeace. Environmental pollution, extreme wealth inequality, as we mentioned in different wordings, a lack of hope, overconsumption, solidarity. So this gives you some sort of, I'm not really surprised by the answers, by the way, because this is a conference about sustainability. So this is something that I would expect the audience to also mention. But while we wrap up this question, you can also already think about the second question, because now we turn to education. And I would like you to finish another sentence which goes like this, and maybe we can put it on screen. I believe that students should learn to, and then you can fill in those words. So considering the urgent societal problems which we've just seen, I believe that students should learn to, fill in the blanks. ... make change, love, live with uncertainties, get engaged, take action, research, spirituality, dialogue, collaborate. Give a few more people the opportunity to finish their answers. Be agents of change. Care for planet Earth, promote well-being. Think out of the box. Learn to live together. Think critically. Consume less. Ooh, that's difficult for my children, but collaborate. Okay. So it's very much about taking action. It's about taking responsibility. Be agents of change, but also about the connection with other people, respect each other, love, civic engagement, so taking a social responsibility, care for planet Earth, care for self and others, promote well-being. So I will get back to this slide at the end of my presentation. I will leave it for now, but these are just some of the thoughts from this audience with regard to what students should learn considering the big societal challenges that we face that we discussed in the previous question. So I will leave it like this, and maybe we can go back to the PowerPoint. Because, as I said, I will provide some sort of a case study of the Dutch education system. You're all from different European and maybe even global countries in the audience. You will all have a different system. Each system is a reflection of every country's history, of its traditions, of its political opinions, of course. And I can only talk about, well, I know, of course, a little bit more about other countries, but I know most about my own country. So I will give a small description of our education system. And it's not really complicated, but it has some peculiarities I will talk about later. We have compulsory education between the age of 5 and 18. So children from age of 5 need to go to school. Most children start at the age of 4, and we have 8 years of primary education. So that will be from 4 to 12. After the primary education, we have a selection at the age of 12, which is relatively early compared to many, many other countries. And we have a highly diversified secondary education. We call it first lower secondary education, and then this sort of splits up in 3 main streams: the pre-vocational, the senior general, and the pre-university education. The pre-vocational lasting a total of 4 years, the senior general lasting a total of 5 years, and the pre-university education a total of 6 years. Senior general and pre-university education lead to higher education, and one of the streams, the pre-vocational, leads to senior vocational education. So that will be people from 16, 17, or 18 onwards proceeding to some form of higher education. And there's different routes that students can take. It's not a rigid system. There's some degree of flexibility. So if you are in a pre-vocational track and you do very well at school, you can also move to the right to the senior general level, basically, or from senior general to the pre-university level. And as you can see, you can also go from pre-university to university, but also to University of Applied Sciences in the middle on the top. So this is our education system, just very roughly at a glance. If you look at the curriculum documents, the curriculum is described on a national level at 3 different levels. Firstly, there are core objectives, 58 of them, in primary education. They are divided across learning areas in primary education. There's in 6 learning areas in primary education. And there's also core objectives at lower secondary level, 58 of them, coincidentally the same number, and also divided over learning areas, 7 learning areas at the lower secondary education. The final 2-3 years, so at the uppermost level, We have exam programs which are written per subject. So we would have like maybe about 100 exam programs, and they're about, for example, physics, or they can be about French, or they can be about geography, economics, and per subject is a different exam program. So this is the way our curriculum has been described. Now, curriculum basically is a plan for learning. We need to make a distinction on between curriculum on a national level, which is described here, and curriculum on a local level, which Arjen has talked about with the examples and the case studies that have come across. I will also show a few of those. So this is basically our curriculum, and especially in primary and lower secondary education, teachers have a lot of freedom because 58 goals are broadly formulated, and people can make adjustments to their own local situation. Well, there's a saying amongst curriculum developers that teachers cry for freedom and call for specification, which is, somewhat contrary to one another. And usually the specification is provided by the textbooks, because our curriculum is rather, especially in primary and lower education, rather vague. Textbooks sort of fill in the gaps, and many teachers use the textbooks as a basis for their teaching. Now, our role as SLO is to be the national coordination of curriculum development. We travel between the local level of the schools and the national level, and we do research. We give advice to the Minister of Education, etc. There's about 130 people working at our institution. So that is the role of SLO. Not really important for the rest of our presentation, but just know where I work. A very peculiar thing, as I said in the beginning of my presentation about the Dutch education system, is the freedom of education. And people find it sometimes difficult to understand how that works. It has to do with our history. In our constitution, it is written that education shall be a constant concern of the government. So it's a responsibility the government takes. It also says that all persons shall be free to provide education without prejudice to the authorities' rights of supervision. Basically, what it means that it is possible for private citizens to start a school with public money. Of course, conditions apply. It's like a credit card, there's a nice offer, but the conditions apply. So you just can't walk into a building and proclaim, now this is a school. There's many conditions that need to be met. But in essence, a group of private citizens can start a school, and then the government is required to provide funding for that school. And traditionally, there has been a lot of tension with regard to the role of government in prescribing the content of the teaching in classrooms in the Netherlands. Because of the diversity in schools, we have Protestant schools, Catholic schools, public schools, schools where Muslims attend, Jewish students, Montessori, many different approaches. And this has made that the government's role has been somewhat limited with regard to prescribing what should be taught. At the same time, there's a few very strong centralized elements to our education system. For example, we have high-stakes testing at the end of secondary school, which is determined by a national organization, and all students are required to take these exams in all of their subjects. At the same time, teachers have much leeway to create their own sort of lessons and their curriculum. So it's a combination of a centralized system, but also a lot of space for teachers to create their own opportunities for students to learn. So in the context of sustainability, schools are free to offer lessons in nature. In fact, my son, he went to a working ecological farm every Wednesday for 6 months in primary education. This is not prescribed on the national level that all students should visit a farm for 6 months every Wednesday. But this is an initiative that a school can take and a teacher can take in the context of the national curriculum. Other schools would do a completely different thing. So there you see the degree of autonomy and the degree of freedom that schools have. There's organizations like the Foundation Technotrend. Maybe someone of this organization is present today, but they provide, for example, lesson examples. This is an example of a student who has isolated her house really well. She did not add the solar panels yet. Maybe that is about to come, but there's space for them. And then there's also the opportunity for teachers to organize visits to museums and to basically to enjoy the wonders of nature and to find additional expertise or interesting topics to discuss with the students. So this is within the framework of a curriculum which is especially for primary education, lower secondary education, rather vague, with high stakes testings at the end. Of course, with an inspectorate that is looking at results of schools, but also a lot of freedom and opportunity for teachers to make their own curriculum. So some sort of a balance we try to strive for in the Netherlands. I'm not saying it's working really well, I'm just describing the situation as it is. So let's have a look in a little bit more detail to the national curriculum. And I will talk both about the current curriculum and about the curriculum that is under revision. From those of you from a Dutch background, you are probably aware of this process, and I will talk a little bit about the current development of the process too. So this picture I've just shown. So this is I will give an example of primary education, example of lower secondary education, and an example of pre-university education focused on sustainability. So an example of a core objective, remember there's about 58 of them in primary education. This is core objective number 39. Students learn to take care of the environment. Well, you could go many directions with that core objective, right? So because teachers also cry for specifications, we have made exemplary work that teachers can use to get more ideas as to how to concretely do this. So they do not always depend on the publisher with their textbooks. We have also provided some additional material. So for example, we've described it as, imagine that a student is a consumer. And if you choose a product, balance the importance of aspects such as health, safety, sturdiness, as well as sustainability. And that is a theme or a project that teachers can organize. So this is the goal, core objective 39. A little bit of a descriptive, exemplary way of dealing with that goal on the primary level. On the pre-vocational level, there's a core objective 30, which says that students should learn that people, animals, and plants interact with each other and their environment, and that technological and scientific applications can influence the sustainable quality thereof, both positively and negatively. So this will be the age of like 13, 14, 15. That students deal with core objective 30. And the example that we've provided to teachers is that they could describe their own ecological footprint and also describe an ecosystem and give an example of an ecosystem. So this is something which is also in the curriculum at the age between 12 and 15. Now, if you look at the pre-university level, here's an example of the exam program of biology. This is for students that maybe go to university afterwards. We say discuss the relationship between population and ecosystem in the context of sustainability and food production. Again, it's about their footprint, the example that we provided. But here they just not describe it, they also determine their own footprint. So you can imagine some calculation will take place to determine your own footprint. And also with talking about relevance, discuss how each of the students can reduce their own footprint. So these are 3 examples of how sustainability is interwoven in the current curriculum. As I said, we have been working on a revision of the curriculum for the last 7 years, Anton? Quite long. Because even though the current curriculum offers quite a few opportunities for sustainability in the program, there's also things that are lacking. For me, it's one very clear example is that in current research, physicists play a very important role in researching the dynamics of climate change. That's physics. That's physicists, researchers that take part in those research projects. However, in the exam program of physics, sustainability is not mentioned at all. So they do learn the formulas. They do learn about Einstein's theory of relativity, etc., but they do not learn about sustainability, which is, I think, it's a shame because climate change is real, it's happening, and physicists are already contributing to this field of expertise. So there's a reason to look at the program, and the core goals have been written down in 2006. Now it's 2022. So you can imagine that society has evolved, our knowledge has evolved. It's also time to sort of update our curriculum. This has been quite a process. It started in 2014. Between 2017 and 2019, development teams have made some proposals to revise the curriculum. I'm sure some of you from a Dutch context will have contributed to that process. I see a few people nodding already. And in the fall of 2019, these products were presented, and then a political debate started. And it lasts until today. In fact, next week in Parliament, there will be a debate with the new Minister of Education about how to proceed with the curriculum revision. One of the things that we hope will change is that there will not be a grand scheme of a curriculum revision from the whole curriculum 4 till 18, but in fact it will be split in different trajectories because teachers already feel overwhelmed. There's a shortage of teachers, there's Corona, there's COVID-19, there's many things that are happening in the education sector, and if we present it as a big change, that's going to require change by all of our teachers, there will be a lot of opposition. So we're trying to divide it in changing some of the exam programs in upper vocational or pre-university level and make it a little bit smaller and more concrete. So this is the proposal that is on the table right now and will be discussed next week in our Parliament. We still expect to start a curriculum revision. In fact, it will start for a few subject areas at the highest level of our secondary education already, and hopefully it will spread to primary education and lower secondary education as well. But if you look at the proposals that have been made, there's the teachers and the curriculum experts that worked on this topic. They worked from 4 global themes, including sustainability. So this has been an important theme in the development process. And I'm sure that once we start making the formal curriculum, this will be taken very seriously. And it's an overarching theme that comes back in all the different learning areas, basically. So sustainability is one of those 4 themes. And of course, globalization, health, technology also provide opportunities for sustainability in the curriculum. And in 3 specific learning areas, humans and society, humans and nature and citizenship, there is a lot of attention for sustainability. And these proposals will be used when we try to formalize the curriculum. So the new curriculum offers many opportunities for sustainability, but formal decision-making still needs to take place. And I'm sure that in many other countries, you will have the same thing, that curriculum is a politicized subject. It's not neutral. As I said, curriculum is about what matters, not about what works. And what matters is, of course, a very moral question. So coming back to the contested nature of curriculum, I've discussed some of the great challenges that we faced, or some people call it the wicked problems that we face as humans in this global world. And also how 17 Sustainable Development Goals offer an integral framework for sustainability. I've looked at the Dutch education system and how this is a combination of a centralized and a decentralized system, where teachers have a lot of opportunity to create their own lessons, but there's also high-stakes testing at the end. And I've shown a few examples of how sustainability is described both in the current curriculum and where it is reflected in the revision of the current curriculum, basically. Now, lastly, I would like to discuss the contested nature of curriculum together with you, and maybe also you can help me a little bit, because we are sometimes, as curriculum developments, torn between different stakeholders that wish to do different things with the curriculum. Well, but first, the debate about curriculum, as I said, it is ongoing. And I assume that some of my Dutch colleagues present here today will have grown a little bit impatient with the curriculum discussion. We have, as curriculum developers. So it's taken quite a while. The interesting thing, though, I think, is that the debate is much more about the process than about the content. So it's not about the question, is sustainability an important theme that we wish to integrate into the curriculum? No, it's about what is the position of teachers in the curriculum development process. Are we going to do it in an integral way, or are we going to slice it up and do it in parts. So these are more process questions that the debate is about than basically questions about content. I know it's the same in other countries as well, but for example, in the US, it's very much about the content of the curriculum, which is under debate. So it's different. And Ian already mentioned that the curriculum, that you talked about hijacking. The many forms of education and many claims on aims, basically, that's how we call it. So many organizations, stakeholders, persons, political parties have claims that they have for the aims of education. And although I would like to think from the perspective of abundance, the fact is that there is only so much time in a school day. And there's only so much time in a school year. And especially if you talk about adolescents, there's only so much amount of attention that they can muster during the day. You know, at the age of 14, 15, they're much more interested in each other than into the curriculum. We have to be honest. So time is scarce. There's scarcity, and we had a huge scandal here in the Netherlands. It's not too long ago, about 2 months ago, where it turned out that a national television program, The Voice of Holland, had experienced, very strange behavior, sexually strange behavior by the presenters and by some jury members, etc. And then I talked to a board member of a big school group, and she said to me, well, I'm predicting within 1 week, there will be an organization that says consent and sexuality needs to be part of the curriculum. And she was right. Within 1 week, there was a claim on the aims. And this is natural. It's also very understandable. But we do need to look at the children and at the teachers, what is feasible. So one way of maybe approaching this is, of course, the integral approach that has been described, to work more thematically rather than subject by subject. So you can actually do more by combining different fields of study, and that would be a way out of this scarcity, basically. But it does play a big role, and also for teachers, as Ian already mentioned. Now, a second thought I wish to share with you. This will be my last thought that I will be sharing today, and then we can open it for questions. Is basically about the function and the purpose of education. To me, in its most basic form, education is about the learning and development of young people. This is a responsibility that we as adults have towards our children. We want them to be able to obtain a qualification. We want them to learn to work with others, socialization. And of course, we also wish to give them a space to work on their personal development. So as adults, we are not only responsible for raising our children, we are also responsible for providing an education that provides opportunities for qualification, socialization, and personal development. The question I'm asking myself, I've been asking myself in preparing this conference, is to what extent we wish to try to change society through education. Is it morally justified to ask of our young people to do things better and differently than we do ourselves? As adults, we are not only responsible for education, we are also responsible for the condition of our planet. So let me come back to all that we require from our students. Maybe you can put again the other slide with the Menti. Remember what we wrote down in the beginning. So I believe that students should, maybe the next one. Proceed to the next one. Yes, there you go. So cooperate, take action, disrupt, be agents of change, love, make change. Now I'm going to quickly change the text. There you go. Oops. So rather than students, I believe that we as adults should learn to cooperate, take action, disrupt, respect each other, think, empathy, care for self and others, have a holistic approach, be creative, get engaged, be well. So the question I would like to leave you with today at the end of my presentation is, can we as adults really look into the mirror and honestly say that we all do this and that we live by all of this that we've just written down and what we would require our students to learn? Thank you very much.